In today's video, we're counting down the most tragic Valentine's Day deaths ever recorded. From a boyfriend expecting a romantic movie night only to face an unexpected visitor from above, to a crowded market where love turns into a crushing nightmare, horrific in every way. It was February 14th, 2015. The evening air in Quezon City was thick with humidity, and the distant home of traffic as couples made their way to the newly renovated multiplex cinema, which had rushed to reopen in time for Valentine's Day screenings. Marco Jaime Santos, a 32-year-old accountant, and his girlfriend Lara approached the theater entrance 15 minutes early for their 7:30 showing, unaware of the accident about to befall them. Marco had built his reputation around punctuality and organization. His co-workers at the mid-sized accounting office knew him as the guy who color-coded his filing system and never missed a deadline. According to Lara, they've been dating for 2 years, and their relationship thrived on small traditions: monthly movie dates, shared meals at their favorite local restaurant, weekend walks through the city parks. The cinema had recently undergone major renovations to compete with newer multiplexes opening across the city. The management company had rushed the project to completion specifically to capitalize on the Valentine's Day weekend rush. During the renovation, contractors had installed new ceiling panels throughout the theater, but several were improperly secured due to compressed deadlines and cost-cutting measures tied to the Valentine's reopening schedule. The 60-pound decorative panel above row 6 had been attached with screws rated only for lightweight fixtures, missing the proper masonry anchors, leaving it held in place by gravity and insufficient fastening. That evening, Marco and Lara settled into their seats in row 6, directly beneath the compromised panel. The theater filled quickly with other couples celebrating the holiday. Staff members had completed last-minute Valentine's decorations earlier that afternoon, leaving behind subtle structural stress in the ceiling fixtures above the auditorium. By 7:15, cumulative vibrations from earlier lighting adjustments and a packed Valentine's Day audience placed added stress on the improperly secured ceiling panels. The subtle shaking went unnoticed by patrons focused on the pre-show advertisements. Without warning, the improperly secured ceiling panel detached. The 60-pound decorative fixture plummeted directly onto Marco's head from 12 feet above. The impact was instantaneous and devastating. Witnesses described hearing a sickening crack followed by Lara's piercing screams as Marco slumped forward in his seat, blood and fragments of the ceiling scattering across nearby chairs. A teenage moviegoer in the adjacent seat received a minor cut from falling debris, but was otherwise unharmed. Chaos erupted throughout the theater as patrons fled toward the exits. Lara frantically shook Marco's motionless body while other customers called emergency services. Staff immediately stopped all decoration work, ensured no other patrons were in danger, and secured the area until paramedics arrived. Paramedics reached the scene within 8 minutes, but Marco showed no signs of life. Investigators later reconstructed the moment using witness alignment, debris patterns, and impact marks found directly below the failed panel. The coroner's report detailed massive skull fractures, severe brain trauma, and extensive lacerations consistent with blunt force trauma from a heavy falling object. Death had been instantaneous upon impact, with no possibility of survival given the severity of the head injuries. The cinema immediately closed for safety inspections, revealing multiple improperly installed ceiling fixtures throughout the building. The physical evidence became crucial in the subsequent negligence investigation against the management company and renovation contractors, with inspection findings documenting multiple installation failures tied to the rushed Valentine's reopening. The incident permanently altered what had been intended as a Valentine's Day celebration, becoming a focal point in the negligence investigation that followed. It was February 14th, 2016. The evening air in Puebla, Mexico carried the usual mix of exhaust fumes and street food aromas. Isabel Rivera, a 28-year-old graphic designer, and Javier Torres, a 30-year-old mechanical engineer, walked hand in hand toward a mid-tier restaurant they'd chosen after weeks of careful planning. Isabel specialized in corporate branding for local manufacturing companies, spending long hours perfecting logos and marketing materials. Her meticulous nature extended beyond work. She researched restaurants extensively, reading reviews and calling ahead about ingredients due to her shellfish allergy. Colleagues of Javier said that he liked structure and order in everyday life, though he was careful not to let it interfere with the people around him. The couple had specifically requested a quiet corner table when making their reservation 3 weeks earlier. The restaurant occupied a converted colonial building with thick stone walls and minimal ventilation, popular among locals for its intimate atmosphere and affordable prices. The restaurant's gas heating system ran through aging pipes beneath the dining room floor, installed decades earlier when building codes were less stringent. Records later showed recent undocumented repairs on the supply line performed by unlicensed contractors with no permit filed. Staff had noted an intermittent faint mercaptan odor over several days, but attributed it to kitchen fumes. No formal incident report had been filed. That evening, Isabel and Javier arrived promptly at 7:30 p.m. They were seated at table 12, positioned directly above a recently patched gas line. Valentine's Day reservations had filled nearly every table, increasing kitchen gas usage and placing added demand on the aging supply system. The waitstaff had noticed a faint sulfur odor in that section, but lacked formal training on gas hazards and dismissed it as typical for an old building. The couple ordered carefully, Isabel asking detailed questions about seafood preparation, while Javier studied the wine list. As they shared appetizers and toasted with inexpensive wine, neither brought up the gradually intensifying odor beneath their table. Other diners in the section had begun commenting quietly about the strange smell, but the restaurant's poor ventilation system prevented proper air circulation. The combination of the enclosed floor cavity, poor ventilation, and kitchen burner usage allowed gas to accumulate to a flammable concentration. By 8:12 p.m., a compromised supply joint beneath the floor allowed additional gas to escape into an already saturated space, pushing concentrations past the flammable threshold. The explosion was instantaneous and devastating. Witnesses described a sharp hissing sound lasting perhaps 2 seconds before a massive fireball erupted from the floor, engulfing table 12 entirely. The blast force shattered windows throughout the dining room and knocked over a wrought iron chandelier, which crashed onto adjacent tables. Isabel and Javier were killed immediately by the combined thermal and concussive forces. Nearby diners dove behind overturned tables as burning debris rained down, sustaining cuts from flying glass and minor burns from scattered flames. Emergency responders arrived within 8 minutes after multiple patrons called from the street. Firefighters secured the gas at the street meter before bringing the fire under control. Paramedics confirmed both victims died instantly from massive trauma. 12 other diners required hospital treatment for smoke inhalation and lacerations. The coroner listed massive blunt and blast trauma and thermal burns as the cause of death. The injuries were perimortem and consistent with instantaneous catastrophic blast effects. Municipal authorities permanently closed the restaurant and filed criminal charges against the unlicensed contractors who had performed the faulty gas line repairs. Municipal records later noted that a joint funeral was held as authorities finalized their findings. It was February 14, 2017. Interstate 85 stretched through downtown Atlanta under clear evening skies, traffic at rush hour. Milo Chen, a 25-year-old nursing student, sat in the rear passenger seat of a compact sedan, headed toward a Valentine's Day dinner reservation. Milo wasn't someone who took unnecessary risks. He'd moved to Atlanta from San Francisco 2 years earlier on a partial scholarship, working weekend shifts at a medical supply warehouse to cover expenses. Ride-share services were his primary transportation, a budget-conscious choice for someone managing student loans and living expenses on limited income. That evening, Milo had requested a ride to meet his girlfriend Ella at a restaurant across town. She sat beside him in the back seat. The driver was chasing promotional bonuses offered by the rideshare platform for completing multiple trips within tight time frames. Other drivers on the platform later reported that these incentive programs created pressure to maintain speed during short traffic openings. Valentine's Day demand had pushed ride-share incentive thresholds higher than usual, encouraging drivers to complete trips rapidly during peak traffic hours. The vehicle itself carried a hidden defect. Maintenance records would later show that the rear passenger side seatbelt had advanced wear with frayed stitching where the webbing attached to the retractor mechanism. A previous passenger had reported the issue through the platform's app 3 weeks earlier, but no repair had been completed. Milo likely buckled the compromised seatbelt without noticing anything unusual. At approximately 6:42 in the evening, the driver accelerated to nearly 65 miles per hour on a briefly unobstructed elevated stretch of Interstate 85, weaving between lanes to maintain speed. Traffic ahead began slowing unexpectedly as vehicles merged to avoid construction barriers. The driver waited too long to brake, then swerved hard into the right lane without signaling. A commercial delivery truck occupied that space, moving significantly slower with limited maneuverability. The collision erupted violently. The sedan's front quarter panel struck the rear axle area of the truck at highway speed, causing partial underride and severe front-end collapse before spinning the smaller vehicle clockwise. The impact generated severe rotational forces, placing sudden load on the already compromised rear passenger side seatbelt assembly. Based on investigations, Milo's compromised seatbelt failed at the retractor anchor under load, offering no restraint as the vehicle spun violently. The rear passenger window shattered during the initial rotation. Milo's body was ejected sideways through the window opening with tremendous force, his trajectory carrying him across the right lane onto the highway shoulder. Witnesses on a pedestrian overpass approximately 200 feet ahead saw the ejection during a momentary clearing in traffic, several immediately calling emergency services. The sedan continued rotating before striking the concrete barrier, coming to rest partially blocking 2 lanes. Emergency medical teams arrived within approximately 9 minutes of the first call, aided by units already positioned nearby for rush hour coverage. Paramedics found Milo unresponsive on the gravel shoulder, positioned face down approximately 40 feet from the primary impact site. His skull showed massive trauma with exposed bone fragments. His torso displayed extensive lacerations from glass and road contact. Multiple ribs were visibly displaced. The driver remained trapped in the crumpled front seat, also unresponsive. Ella had sustained minor whiplash and was conscious, but in acute psychological shock. The county coroner's examination confirmed blunt force trauma to Milo's skull as the primary cause of death. The driver died from severe chest trauma, leading to rapid cardiac failure. Both deaths were ruled to have occurred within moments of impact. Milo's nursing cohort organized a private memorial service the following week. His family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against both the rideshare platform and the vehicle's owner, which settled confidentially 18 months later. It was February 14, 2018. The evening air in Bangkok's Sukhumvit district hung thick with humidity and the mingled aromas of street food and exhaust fumes. Sudha Anand, a 34-year-old freelance translator, stood outside an upscale Thai restaurant, checking her phone repeatedly as her Valentine's date grew increasingly uncomfortable beside her. Sudha had built her reputation on precision and demanding excellence from others. Working primarily with international business clients, she translated complex legal documents and corporate communications, often under tight deadlines that required absolute accuracy. Her colleagues described her as brilliant but impatient, someone who expected the same efficiency from service providers that she delivered professionally. She had specifically chosen this restaurant for its reputation and made reservations weeks in advance, emphasizing the importance of punctual service for her special evening. Commercial kitchens operate as controlled chaos, with multiple gas burners, industrial-grade equipment, and staff coordinating dozens of orders simultaneously. Professional kitchen staff are trained to maintain strict safety protocols around open flames, hot surfaces, and pressurized gas lines. The restaurant's kitchen featured traditional wok stations with intense blue wok flames that produced extremely high localized heat, designed for rapid cooking, but requiring constant vigilance around loose clothing and flammable materials. That evening, the restaurant had overbooked Valentine's reservations, creating delays throughout the dining room. When Suda's table wasn't ready by their confirmed time, she grew increasingly agitated. The hostess explained the delay, but Suda demanded immediate resolution. Against restaurant policy and staff protests, she pushed past the service counter toward the kitchen area, determined to speak directly with management about the unacceptable wait time. A line cook reached out and grabbed her sleeve as she brushed past him, forcing her way between the crowded stations. The kitchen was operating at peak capacity, with 6 chefs managing multiple stations simultaneously. Steam rose from boiling pots while flames danced beneath sizzling wok pans. Staff members called out warnings as Suda entered the restricted area, but she ignored them, focused entirely on locating the head chef. Her flowing synthetic blouse, chosen specifically for the romantic evening, billowed as she moved between the cramped cooking stations. Suda leaned aggressively over an active gas burner to get the attention of a chef preparing stir-fry, demanding immediate seating for her party. Her loose sleeve brushed directly against the open flame, igniting instantly. The synthetic fabric caught fire with shocking speed, flames racing up her arm and across her torso within seconds. Kitchen staff immediately attempted to smother the flames using nearby towels and a fire blanket. Someone called emergency services. The suppression hood discharged automatically when a fusible link failed, sending a chemical foam over the stations. Despite these interventions, Suda collapsed to the floor, screaming as the synthetic material melted against her skin. First responders arrived approximately 12 minutes after the initial call, finding Suda in cardiac arrest. Paramedics transported her to the nearest trauma center, but she was pronounced dead en route. The coroner's report indicated third-degree burns covering 40% of her body surface, severe smoke inhalation, and thermal damage to her respiratory system causing complete airway obstruction. Authorities classified the death as accidental, while investigators cited negligence in allowing unauthorized access to the kitchen area. The restaurant faced temporary closure and safety violations pending a fire safety audit and review of staff training for allowing unauthorized kitchen access. It was February 14, 2013. The afternoon sun cast long shadows along Canal Street near the French Quarter as crowds gathered around a short parade route, their laughter and music masking the mechanical groaning of hydraulic systems that would soon claim a life before the celebration ended. Derek Lowe, a 29-year-old construction foreman from Metairie, had volunteered his Saturday to assist with a Mardi Gras cruise private Valentine's Day procession, organized during post-season float breakdown. Known for his easy smile and willingness to jump in wherever needed, Derek supervised commercial building projects during the week, but spent weekends coaching youth baseball and volunteering at community events. His co-workers described him as the guy who never said no to helping others, sometimes to his own detriment. He had arrived early that morning to assist with float setup, his construction experience making him valuable for last-minute mechanical adjustments. Parade floats operate using complex hydraulic systems that raise and lower platforms carrying performers and decorations. These systems require precise weight distribution and constant monitoring, with safety protocols requiring trained operators and restricted access during movement. Most floats feature multiple elevation points controlled by pressurized fluid systems that can exert thousands of pounds of force. Float ladders and decorative climbing areas are normally secured or locked during operation to prevent volunteer or public access, and inspection checklists are required by city permit regulations. That afternoon, Derek was walking alongside a moving float when a child in the crowd began crying after losing her balloon to the wind. The balloon had caught on the float's elevated platform, dangling just out of reach about 12 feet above street level. The platform ladder was temporarily unsecured due to the rushed morning setup. Without hesitation, Derek climbed onto the slow-moving float and began ascending the decorative maintenance area not intended for climbing, ignoring the driver's repeated warnings about unauthorized access during operation. The platform was already carrying an uneven load of decorations and sound equipment, creating a slight but dangerous tilt that Derek failed to notice. Parade organizers had rushed the setup that morning, skipping proper weight distribution checks and ignoring the mandatory float inspection checklist to meet the scheduled start time. As Derek reached for the balloon, a load-shifted hydraulic valve momentarily released under the uneven weight, causing the platform to tilt sharply rather than collapse, with the system straining dangerously under the improper load distribution. The moment Derek grabbed the balloon, the platform tilted at an extreme 25-degree angle, sending him sliding directly into the float's main support beam, his torso striking the steel structure with devastating force. The impact crushed Derek against the beam, with the full weight of the tilting platform behind him. Spectators screamed as they witnessed his body compress against the metal structure. The float driver immediately stopped and activated emergency hydraulics, but Derek remained pinned between the platform and support beam, blood beginning to pool beneath him on the street. Parade medical personnel reached the scene immediately, working frantically to free Derek from the twisted hydraulic mechanism. Emergency responders used hydraulic rescue tools to lift the platform, extracting his unconscious body after 5 minutes of intensive effort. Despite immediate CPR and rapid transport to the trauma center, Derek never regained consciousness. The coroner determined that Derek suffered multiple rib fractures, a completely crushed sternum, massive internal bleeding, and severe pelvic fractures. Death occurred instantly from cardiac arrest, caused by crushing trauma to his chest cavity. The parade was suspended for 2 hours, as police cordoned off nearby streets and documented the scene. Investigators took statements from the float driver, parade organizers, and eyewitnesses, focusing on skipped inspections and unauthorized access. Days later, the city suspended the organizing group's permits, required mandatory safety briefings for remaining parades that season, and tightened enforcement rules requiring locked access points and documented hydraulic load checks before float approval. It was February 14, 2013. The narrow alleyways of Casablanca's central flower market buzzed with Valentine's Day shoppers, the air thick with rose petals, and the press of bodies moving through passages barely wide enough for 2 people. Layla Benali, a 26-year-old economics student, walked hand in hand with her boyfriend Karim through the crowded bazaar, unaware that the festive atmosphere masked a deadly trap waiting to spring. Layla had grown up in Casablanca's middle-class Marif district, the youngest of 3 daughters in a family that valued education and independence. She was pursuing her master's degree while working part-time at a local bank, known among friends for her infectious laugh and determination to experience everything the city offered. Karim, 27, worked as a telecommunications technician and had been dating Layla for 2 years. Friends of Layla said that he was protective but often distracted in social situations, frequently checking his phone. The flower market operated in a maze of medieval alleyways originally designed for donkey carts, not modern foot traffic. During peak seasons, thousands of shoppers funneled through passages measuring just 8 feet wide, with metal barriers installed to direct flow, but creating dangerous bottlenecks. Vendors lined both sides, reducing walkable space to barely 4 feet. Emergency exits were poorly marked, and crowd control measures were virtually non-existent despite repeated warnings from safety officials. A few local officers were present, trying to direct the flow, but they were quickly overwhelmed by the dense crowd. That afternoon, Layla and Karim joined hundreds of couples seeking last-minute Valentine's flowers. The market was operating at dangerous capacity, with an estimated 2,700 people spread across the market's interconnected passages, far exceeding safe capacity. Local authorities had issued informal warnings about overcrowding, but market organizers dismissed concerns, prioritizing holiday profits over safety protocols. The couple pushed deeper into the market's heart, where the most popular flower stalls created natural gathering points. At 3:15 in the afternoon, a vendor's cart overturned near the market's main entrance, spilling merchandise and blocking the primary exit route. Panicked shoppers began pushing backward through the narrow passages, creating a human wave that compressed everyone ahead. Karim, momentarily separated from Layla while examining roses, found himself swept sideways by the surge. He said that he called her name but couldn't see her through the mass of bodies. The crowd pressure intensified rapidly as more people pushed from behind, unaware of the blockage ahead. Layla became trapped against a metal crowd control barrier, her chest compressed as bodies pressed against her from all directions. Witnesses later described seeing her face above the crowd, mouth open, struggling for air as the human mass tightened like a vice. Karim fought desperately to reach her, but the crowd's momentum was unstoppable. Within minutes, Layla's face turned blue as the crushing pressure prevented her lungs from expanding. She lost consciousness as dozens of people remained pressed against her, unable to move in any direction. A vendor who witnessed the incident from his elevated stall called emergency services. Paramedics arrived 18 minutes later in the congested streets, but extracting victims from the compressed crowd took additional precious time. When rescuers finally reached Layla, she was unresponsive. Despite immediate CPR and transport to the hospital, she was pronounced dead at 4:45 in the afternoon. The coroner's report indicated death by compressive asphyxia, with severe bruising across her chest and neck, consistent with sustained crowd pressure. In the aftermath, attention centered on the market's overcrowding and lack of effective crowd control measures, rather than any single individual's actions. The market installed additional emergency exits and crowd monitoring systems, though similar tragedies continue occurring at overcrowded public events across Morocco. Thanks for watching. If you liked these stories, click here.